good. Everything's just great. Everything's wonderful. Everything's just wonderful.
Oh, yes.
Ah.
So wonderful.
Yeah, so this whole thing over the weekend was this whole decision and everything else has been a little bit crazy. I kind of feel like a chicken without a head running around trying to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, I was just like, all right, so I'm going to tell you guys what's going on here. I'm going to tell you guys what's going on. And then I was like, you know what? If you guys aren't willing to see this for yourself, and you're just going to, misconstrue and muddy the waters, I can't help you. We'll just talk about it on Monday on the space. You know?
Yeah, I was glad you're always doing one, so I was glad that you decided to do one today.
Yeah, exactly. I think the update's good. This is like part 7 or part 8 of the Missouri v. Biden series. I'm just now seeing like people like Congress people like, hey, check this case out. We're all like, we kind of been here for a while.
Where have you been?
I mean, it does involve you guys, just so we're clear, but
Yeah, we know how valuable Congress is, so.
Oh God, Nick Sorter and I covered it all last week. Trust me, it was very quote unquote valuable. I'll put it that way.
I look, listen, I give you credit because I talked about it for like a little bit, but I it's so frustrating. It's if any corporation anywhere in the world ran like this effing government, they would be out of business in less than a month. Forget about years.
Yeah, like everybody would have been fired within 30 days. Just to be clear.
Literally everybody. Hemorrhaging money, not able to make decisions, bickering amongst one another. Imagine trying to run a board meeting and all you need to do is elect the chair to chair the meeting, and you can't do that because you're too busy fighting with each other over who which I mean, come on. Like it's you know what it is? It reminds me of local politics when a new guard comes in with a new vision and direction and the old guard does not want to let go of the microphone. It's exactly what it is. Because I experienced it myself, so I know. And it's terrible.
Like imagine, right? Imagine for a moment you're an employer and all of your employees are taking money from adversarial companies for insider secrets in the company. And then they're like, yeah, it's fine. We'll just keep them. It's no big deal. Like imagine.
And it's funny because like we accept this trash, we accept it. We don't accept it, but we don't do anything about it. Like this is like one of the main things. We had opportunities to get rid of a lot of these people and elect their primary challengers, but unfortunately, a lot of the population doesn't take advantage of the primary election process. And I think that if anything needs to happen, we need to educate people more on how important primaries really are. Because once you pass that, you're stuck with who you're stuck with. And then you're like, okay, well, do I vote for this person or do I vote, skip it and then a Democrat gets in or whatever? So,
Well, then you would be very proud of us. So last week, while we were covering for like hours a day, like 7 hours, Tracy, hours a day while we were covering this, and we had Congress people stop in. We had Santos and Gates and Boebert and Donalds and a few other people would pop in and kind of tell us what's going on. Nick was then up in D.C. reporting from D.C. We got actually Jim Jordan's first statement to anyone post that vote where he stepped away from the process. He actually came. He actually interviewed with Nick on the space, answered a few questions before he went and talked to the press. So that was pretty cool. But what we were doing to fill time in some of that instances was like instead of just like opining on how bad our government's run, we started bringing up primary challengers to the holdouts. So we had challengers for Ferguson and Georgia, Jim Bennett, who's in here. We had John O'Shea, who was going to try to primary Kay Granger out of Texas. We had Victor Avila, who's trying to primary Gonzalez out of Texas. We have Trent. We had Trent here from Colorado challenging Ken Buck, and many other primary challengers. And they were basically fielding questions, speaking with people, answering questions, and putting forth campaigns to go. And we actually had 2 additional people, including Matt Couch. Matt Couch is going to run against Womack in Northwest Arkansas. He's probably going to win. He's probably going to win.
that's
So
so listen, that's great and I love it. I just want everybody to understand that when you try to primary an entrenched GOP bureaucrat, you had better be ready with an army of people who live in your area, an army of them. and the ability to at least have some name recognition ready to go in your, you need to start planning this. Like, they're going to throw everything plus the kitchen sink and the bathroom bathtub at you to try and stop you from doing this. They will throw money, they will buy mailers for the other candidate. They, like, on the D side, the lengths they'll go to stop new primary challengers is, it, it's almost unfathomable, but it happens all the time. Like, it happened here in South Carolina. Everybody's always like, "Hey, why do you have Lindsey Graham? And why do you keep voting in Lindsey Graham?" Do you want to know why we vote in Lindsey Graham? We vote in Lindsey Graham because anytime anybody tries to primary Lindsey Graham, the GOP here in South Carolina funds, they do things they're not supposed to do, okay? Because they're not supposed to get involved in primaries at all. At all. They're not supposed to choose a candidate. Primaries are supposed to be primaries. The GOP doesn't make a preference. And there's the rules say they must not get involved, but they do. And the person who was primarying Lindsey Graham last time just got absolutely destroyed by the South Carolina good old boy money machine. And there was just no hope for him after that. So you have to be prepared for that trash. Get your battle gear on and get ready to charge in there. And I have been saying to myself for years now, I would love to primary Lindsey Graham in South Carolina.
Oh, I would love nothing more than to get rid of diversity, hire Lady G. So we're gonna have to get that done.
It's not easy. I mean, he would probably like rip my family apart. Like, they go to they I just ran the GOP here in my county, and they tried to destroy me under false lawsuits and all kinds of other stuff. It was something else. So, it's not easy, but if you have the fortitude to do it and the people stay behind you, it's possible. You just need to do it with the strategy and do it with the support of your constituency, and then you've got a chance. Okay, prolonged
Trash,
silence.
do you realize you're on
Well, I
mute?
do. I do now. Dang it! I was going to say. What I was saying was we're at about 150 people and climbing, so we can probably start to get into this, Tracy. I don't know if. Do you want me to recap? Do you kind of want to recap? You've been covering this since last May, and then I jumped on around January. So, do you want to recap? Do you want me to recap? How do you want to do this?
Let's do it as a kind of tag team if that works for
Sounds good to
you.
me. Why don't you kick us off, and then I can kind of color in some lines.
Sure thing. So, first of all, thank you so much to Trash, who does nothing but amazing work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I recommend him to all of my friends whenever I have a chance, and I'm going to do it again, even though you're all here for him as it is. I love you. You're fantastic in so many ways, and it's just a breath of fresh air to have someone like you on our side. So that's what I have to say first. Um, Second of all, this is mildly frustrating for me to because here's what happened. So as we last left off, the the injunction was held by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the injunction basically just says you guys cannot, government, get together with social media companies and coerce them to remove posts that are, quote, wrong think, regardless of what they're about. It's not your place. That's it in a nutshell. So that's the only thing this injunction stopped them from doing. You cannot recommend, coerce, tell, suggest that social media companies remove social media posts. You cannot interfere in their terms of service and content moderation strategy. None of that stuff. So the court originally granted that injunction, but only for the White House, the CDC, the Surgeon General, and the FBI, and they left CISA out of it. Everybody, like the three of us, me, you, and Name, all raised ruckus about it and said, CISA needs to be included here, and here's why. It turned out that Missouri and Louisiana actually said to the Fifth Circuit, we want you to reconsider this decision because it's a mistake. You didn't include CISA. Here's why it's a mistake. The Fifth Circuit said, oh my gosh, you're right. It is a mistake. We're going to add them on. And then it went back up to the Supreme Court because, of course, the government wants to censor you. And the Supreme Court had to stay on that injunction while they decided whether or not they were going to take the case at all. Well, Friday we got our answer. Now, when I say take the case, I don't mean that they're hearing the case of Missouri v. Biden. The case of Missouri v. Biden is currently ongoing in district court in Louisiana. It hasn't even gotten to evidentiary hearing yet. It's in the very early stages. The temporary injunction part of this came first because the plaintiffs and everyone else, as per the fifth, are being harmed irreparably every single day that this decision or that this temporary injunction is not in place. So the case is still ongoing. The temporary injunction is what the Supreme Court will be hearing. The government says this injunction actually stops our ability to speak. It stops our ability to use the bully pulpit to try and influence citizens the way that we think things should go. And that's not true at all. That is the opposite of what this injunction does. This injunction merely bars already unconstitutional acts that the federal government could take. So the fact that they've misrepresented it so much is super interesting. So what happened now is the Supreme Court ruled, yes, we're going to take this case up and we'll hear it in the spring. But unfortunately, they placed an indefinite stay on the temporary injunction. And what that means is that stay, meaning that the injunction does not take effect, is in place until next spring when the SCOTUS gets back together and starts hearing cases. Now, there were three dissenting opinions from that: Justice Alito, Justice Thomas, and Justice Gorsuch. All three of them said, "What in the hell are you doing here? This is unbelievable." And further, why does the government have the intention of acting unconstitutionally in the interim while we wait for this case to happen in front of us? Like, that's why they're complaining about it. And they basically said, and Trash, you correct me if I'm wrong, they basically said in the dissent, which is unheard of, it's unprecedented for a 5-page dissent to be written on a case like this, where they're just basically granting cert and a stay. Um, but they said they didn't even read it to know whether or not they should be doing this or not. It's a travesty. And that's what Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas said in their dissent. So where we're at right now is a stay on this injunction until the spring when the Supreme Court gets back together to decide whether or not the injunction was warranted. And if we go off of what Alito, Gorsuch, and Thomas said, it absolutely was warranted. The plaintiffs are likely to succeed on the merits. They are experiencing harm every single day that this continues to happen. And this stay was inappropriate and the injunction should be upheld. And that's basically where we're at.
Yeah, that's although that is 100% correct, and your reporting on this has been spot on. And there's a lot to unpack with this case. Like, listen, when I say words like this is a really fun case, I don't mean that like it's super enjoyable and how fun it is. What I mean is it actually gets to the nuts and bolts of what's going on, and with people like Tracy, myself, Jennifer, maybe many people up here who have been banned, censored, demonetized, deplatformed, all of these things through these apparatuses, that we now have a case that is actually going forth, and even appeals courts and SCOTUS say, okay, this case has merit, this case does need to go
Yep.
forward. And when you hear things like that and they're like, oh, you know what, you're right, we shouldn't have left CISA out, I think we can get into a little bit of what CISA is and why it's so important. I can see a bunch of people listening that I follow, they all know, but there may be a lot of people that go back and listen to this recording. There's 265 people in here at this moment. They may not know what CISA is really all about and how detrimental it is to the American people. Maybe we can start there, because what you said was about originally. So the judge, just so we know, that's hearing this case is down in Louisiana, Judge Terry Doty. Terry Doty is really based. Matter of fact, you're working on following another case that he has as well. Very similar. I'd like to hear about that as well. But this judge, so like, just so you guys know, so kind of the time of events, it was filed when? Back in May of last year, I believe, Tracy, is that correct?
May of
Yep.
2022,
Yep.
correct.
So May of last year, they filed this case, and it was Andrew Bailey, who at the time was the Attorney General for the state of Missouri, and then I believe Jeff Landry joined shortly after. Correct?
Yes, and I believe that Eric Schmidt started it in
Yep.
Missouri, and then he went to the Senate. So, right, he's in the Senate now,
Yep. Yep.
I believe. Yeah, so he started it, and Bailey took over. Yep.
Yep. And Andrew Bailey's been excellent, really good guy. But my favorite is Jeff Landry, which, by the way, take a moment to congratulate Jeff
He's
Landry. He's now the governor.
yes.
The governor. He flipped Louisiana red. Just so we're clear, Tracy and I, we've been talking about this for what? Months on end, and we all called it. We're like, no, Jeff's going to be the next governor. You watch. He's going to be the next governor of Louisiana. They're like,
He's
Go ahead.
badass. And I said to him when I interviewed him, I was like, this man's going to be president one day. He has president written all over his ass. He better run for president one day.
He's so sharp. He is so sharp, so smart, and you think that we know a lot about this stuff that's going on. This guy is really well versed in the censorship apparatus. He really understands this, and he's understood it for a very long time. Jeff Landry is absolutely an American patriot, so congratulations to him for winning the governorship. But one of the things that Terry Doty, who's the judge out of the Fifth Circuit down there, you know what? I better set the stage, Tracy, a little bit more here. So the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, it's not a single judge. Okay, this is like a panel of, I believe it's three judges. Tracy, is that correct? There's three judges that are overseeing this in the fifth
This one, yes.
in the Fifth Circuit. Yeah, and so the Fifth Circuit has the appeals court. So obviously the government didn't like what Terry Doty released on July 4th, I might add, of this year. Like so based. He releases his opinion and warned enforces the injunction and puts in some stipulations that the government, I think, rightfully so, made an argument on a couple things. But he said, you're right. Actually, you should be able to coordinate if there's actually illegal activity going on a platform. You should be able to, if there's an actual real national security threat, be able to coordinate with social media companies. Yes, you should, and I agree. And you should be able to talk to your constituents. You should be able to have an official page. You should be able to say whatever you want to people and have them listen. Now, he said all those things, but what he said you can't do is go against constitutionally protected First Amendment speech. That is opinions. That's even information that may be incorrect. It's not the government's business to be the arbiter of truth. That's not how this works. But what Jeff Landry pointed out in your interview, Tracy, if you guys haven't seen it, go to Tracy's Rumble. You can find it on what, Uncover DC, the Dark to Light podcast with you did.
Yeah, or uncover DC's Rumble channel and just search Landry.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, I highly recommend go watching that, because one of the things that he pointed out that I think was very succinct and very important to point out, and Jen, I'm coming to you. He pointed out it's not just your right to speak. You also have a First Amendment right to hear others' opinions and what other people say. So it's not just that you can speak it. You have a right to listen. You have a right to hear it. Very important to note. Go.
Yes, and the Fifth Circuit, I mean, the Fifth Circuit even went further with that, and basically said that forever now, because of this. Well, it's kind of a different tangent. I'll wait. Keep going.
Yeah,
Sorry.
because I'm going to get there as well. I think I see exactly where you're going with this. So, Jen, your hand shut up, so I don't want to go too far off topic before we get there. So go ahead, Jen.
Hey guys, thanks. How does Jeff Landry getting elected to governor affect this case, like negatively or positively?
Well, not only did Jeff Landry get elected to governor, which will be in November, but the Solicitor General of Louisiana, who is also a bullish attorney on this case, she's brilliant, and she has actually a vaccine injured son. Liz Murrill is running for AG, and she went to a runoff, so she's running to take Landry's spot. So that election will be in November. It doesn't affect anything in the short term, and I don't think Louisiana is going to have another solicitor general who will be anti this case, given the tenor of that office.
Yeah, that's the people that are around Landry, and he has amassed a lot of power now in Louisiana. He is a very powerful guy down there now, and I agree with you, Tracy. I lend to believe that anybody that's going to be surrounding these kind of offices are going to be nowhere near anti this case. I think they're going to be pro this case. And frankly, putting politics aside, this is what I've been trying to scream to even people on the left, which they're now seeing it, by the way. I said, once this stuff is in place, and they're going to come after your opinions next. Like, I don't think you understand. Like, this is not a partisan issue. This is a constitutional issue. So let's be clear about what this actually means. This means your speech too, even if you disagree with me on every political take that I have. Don't care. I still care about your constitutional right to speak that opinion. And this is being challenged, and this is why this case is so important. And I believe that you're right. I think that anybody's going to get in there, especially with Jeff Landry at the helm. I think it's going to protect the case just fine. And also the entire teams that are behind this. It's not just those two. I mean, there's tons of people, as Tracy mentioned, that are behind this. So.
There's actually a plaintiff hiding in the audience here.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'm glad for them being a plaintiff in this case because this is a very, very important landmark case, and we really, really need to make sure that we're paying attention to this, guys. I see that Congress people are now finally picking up on it, so that's cool. But the reason we wanted to do this, right, Tracy, was to make sure that we're not muddying the waters, that people are clear on what is actually happening here. And
Yeah, and it's important because it's going to get more nuanced as we go on, and I want everybody to be actually informed.
correct. So first and foremost, be informed on this. So on July 4th of this year, Terry Doty issued the temporary injunction until the completion of the case. The case has merit. The government appealed that to the Fifth Circuit panel of judges. The panel actually came out, and I believe if you go read the opinion of the Fifth Circuit, now they gutted a lot of that stuff out that was put forth by Judge Doty. We can kind of cover that. I've covered it in one of the other 7 spaces that I've done on this. But if you want to go back and listen to those recordings are in my highlights tab in my profile. You can find them all there. That's why I number them 1 through 7, or one. There's technically 8. But if you go through that, you can listen to it. But basically, what happened was the Fifth Circuit not only did they issue an opinion, kind of gut out there was 10 different rulings that Terry Doty had made. They gutted everything out but number 7. And so basically, the Fifth Circuit, in that opinion, they actually went into great detail citing case law, like unbelievable case law. Basically, what they were doing was setting it up. It seemed like, right, Tracy? It seemed like that panel of judges wrote that opinion on the appeal so that it would be fast tracked, or at least be able to be litigated well in front of SCOTUS. That's what it seemed like.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
So this Fifth Circuit, even though they've been kind of the babysitters on this case, and they have been the entire time, they've been kind of watching out over Terry Doty's work, sending stuff back down to the lower court, saying you need to work this out. And when he issued his opinion, that was then appealed. They said, okay, this and this and this will take out, including CISA. We're going to take out this agency, that agency. We're going to leave in the White House. We're going to leave in the CDC. We're going to leave in, the government, but we're going to take out CISA. That's what Tracy was talking about. So then they revisited with the Fifth Circuit saying, you need to get CISA back in here. CISA is like the switchboard for censorship, but between all offices of government, including NGOs. These were the guys. The CISA, which is under the Department of Homeland Security, Jen Easterly, director of CISA at this time, they were handling all the requests from all the NGOs. The Global Engagement Center, which if you weren't following the Twitter files or this case, Global Engagement Center was basically a hub for 9 different governmental agencies to feed in censorship and banning and suspension requests. They then would feed that to CISA, and then CISA would directly switchboard with the social media companies to get things taken down. So CISA is at the center of all of this, to be honest with you. And so now CISA is back in. We just saw that ruling. When did we see that? Two weeks ago, I think, Tracy, where they added CISA back in?
Yep, and we were all taking a victory
That was a
lap.
victory lap. Now that one, because
Yep.
we've had a lot of ups and downs in this case, but that was a victory lap because that's the big one. But now, as you pointed out, and now with SCOTUS's ruling that you just showed, that now the injunction has a stay until spring of next year when they start taking up cases, so that the government can still do that right now. So it's unfortunate. And the White House, now granted, will they do it? Because right now you still have open discovery. The case is still going on. And this stuff can be subpoenaed and requested at any given time. So it'll be interesting to see what the government does about this.
Yeah, and to that point, like a lot of people say, "Oh, well, they're not even going to listen to the stay once it is in place." And I keep on fighting them about that and saying, "Well, they will, and that's because the social media companies are going to be subpoenaed as well. So they're going to be producing documents. There's no way they're going to get together to come up with what are they producing, what are they holding back, if they hold it, like they can't even, keep their whistleblowers straight, let alone cross contamination amongst, non-party defendants, which is what the social media companies will basically be, or non-party, not necessarily defendants, but non-parties to the lawsuit. And the social media companies have a vested interest in this lawsuit working out in our favor, because otherwise they're acting as publishers and their Section 230 protection could be in jeopardy when it's out on display in a court of law like this. So it's super interesting. Now, at the same time as this is going on, you had mentioned there's another case, and yes, there is. So Health Freedom Louisiana and Jill Hines are suing the companies or the not-for-profits and NGOs like the Atlantic Council, Stanford Internet Observatory, and others who are doing the bidding of the government that the government thought was too egregious to do themselves. So the government was like, I don't think we should censor this hard. We need to bring someone in from outside to do it for us. And then we'll just tell them what we want and then they can do it because they're private and it's not the same constitutionality applicability. So they did that. And the problem for them is that these agencies are these NGOs are taxpayer funded. So your tax dollars are going to these NGOs to build this policy, write these white papers, pressure social media companies. And I was going to do a thread on this case last week, but I got to be honest with you, it is wildly complicated legal theory that the agencies have thrown in there. To sum it up without getting too into the legalese, they're arguing that this needs to go to arbitration. It's so stupid the way they're doing this. They're saying that what's actually at issue is the terms, the contract between the end user and the social media company, not the actions of the NGO and the social media company. And it's an asinine, ass backwards, nonsense, waste of time theory that they know is absurd on its face, but are pushing to try and likely financially drain the plaintiffs who are suing. So I'm trying to work on that, but trash, it's 800 pages and it's a lot to distill down into some kind of a bite-sized morsel for people, but I'm hopefully going to have that out next week.
Yeah, and if you need any help with that, obviously that I'll help because this is
Uh
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
please. Yes,
yeah. So I'll
please.
take a look at it with you. Maybe we can brainstorm a little bit and see how to attack it because 800 pages can be done. Just got to do it right. So I'm going to go back on something you said, Tracy, just now, so that people understand what we're talking about when it comes to NGOs doing what the government can't do. And actually, I'm going to play a couple clips so you guys can hear it out of their own mouths. So let's explain a little bit what actually was occurring with CISA. So CISA is the Cybersecurity Administration underneath the Department of Homeland Security, right? And essentially, the government is not allowed to basically remove millions of people from social media, get their posts banned, whatever it may be. They're not allowed to do that. And so they needed private sector solutions to kind of do that. And this is where back then, this is prior to the election, was the Election Integrity Partnership that was formed. Now, this was formed by Alex Stamos and many others. And this was kind of a go-between between CISA and a non-governmental office, an NGO, and connected with these universities. Because I have a few clips that I always play, and I think I'll play it again so people can really understand it. So this was actually a clip. It's about a minute long, and he kind of explains what EIP, which is the Election Integrity Partnership, that turned into the Virality Project, and partnering with the Stanford Internet Observatory. There's a lot of ex-CIA people that work in this kind of arena. Renee DiResta. It turns out Renee probably worked for the CIA maybe 6 months, but her fingerprints are all over it everywhere. And Alex Stamos as well. And I have a couple clips I'm going to play. And they are actually telling you at an Atlantic Council meeting. It's called the 360 Open Summit, and they explain specifically how this non-government office coordinated with CISA to be kind of like the go-between or the band-aid to do what the government couldn't do to you, and how they were able to leverage on these social media companies actually having, as we saw in the Twitter files, direct access to just doing it through the ticketing system called JIRA, Jira. And so let me just play this clip for you guys. Let me make sure my mic is on standard. Okay, perfect. Here, I'll play this so you guys can really understand it. And this is her own words. And then I'm going to get into the Kate Starbards of the world and the out of Washington State, and how they're actually able to plot, graph, and bottleneck and stop posts from going viral before too many people reach it, and how that happened. Like, they did all of these things. Give me 1 second. I'll play it.
This is not because CISA didn't care about disinformation, but at the time, they lacked both kind of the funding and the legal authorizations to go do the kinds of work that would be necessary to truly understand how election disinformation is operating. So because of the feedback and the ideas from this group, we were able to pull together pretty quickly a project between these 4 different institutions to try to fill the gap of the things that the government could not do themselves. The cooperation between government and tech platforms has been very effective in this. These institutions put together probably read, 60 or 70 papers over the last 12 months talking about the outcome of those takedowns. I think the 2 challenges here are, one, how do we maintain this, right?
The federal government wasn't prepared to identify and analyze election mis and disinfo. There was no clear federal lead to coordinate the work, because the IC, of course, is rightly limited to a foreign focus, and the FBI also has very specific designations and limitations. CISA had created support, but had no real capability. There were unclear legal authorities, including very real First Amendment questions. There were unclear legal authorities.
So the last woman you heard was Renee DiResta. I always call her CIA Renee. But you heard the first guy speaking was Alex Stamos. So this is them kind of getting this set up. They're saying, hey, we need to get access to money. We need to understand legal theory and authority. We need to figure out what's legal, what's not. And then we can create a market around it and create this EIP and move forward. So far you've heard from Alex Stamos and Renee DiResta. Now this is where they blatantly tell you exactly what they were doing.
There was a lack of capability around election disinformation. This is not because CISA didn't care about disinformation, but at the time they lacked both kind of the funding and the legal authorizations to go do the kinds of work that would be necessary to truly understand how election disinformation was operating. So because of the feedback and the ideas from this group, we were able to pull together pretty quickly a project between these four different institutions to try to fill the gap of the things that the government could not do themselves. There are kind of four major stakeholders that we operated with that we worked beside at EIP. Our partners in government, most particularly those in CISA, DHS, but also in all the local and state governments with whom we operated with the election integrity infrastructure ISAC. We worked with civil society groups such as NAACP, MITRE, Common Cause, and the Healthy Elections Project that worked at both MIT and Stanford. And then we also worked with the major platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, Nextdoor, and the like. In some of those cases, we had agreements for access to data. In other cases, we had to have individual analysts go work with them.
So that sets the stage of when you ask who CISA is. Well, I think this explains it, and then who the EIP was. It turned into the Virali Project and how they use CIA carve-outs, cutouts, NGOs, and universities to do the work that they could not do as the federal government themselves. This is 100% blatantly explaining it. Now, what you can't see are the four major stakeholder groups that they considered, right? So the first was government. So you had the elections infrastructure, which is ISAC. You had CISA, and then you had the GEC, which is the Global Engagement Center. So once again, the Global Engagement Center was a hub for 9 different governmental agencies that had censorship or suppression requests. They then would take through the Global Engagement Center hub and send it to CISA. CISA then would fire off and switchboard either directly to social media companies, or they would use these NGOs to then contact these social media companies and take down content, take down users and platforms. Now, you had civil societies, which is the second major stakeholder group. These are just different organizations. You kind of went through the Belfer Center at Harvard. By the way, look at Belfer Center, by the way, the stuff that they're doing in this market right now, in this sector at Harvard. It's spooky. Belfer Center is no joke. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Google, TikTok, looks like Reddit, Nextdoor, Discord, and Pinterest even. And then, of course, their fourth major stakeholder was the media, which they had no direct access to. So the media was actually left out of these NGO work. That was done differently, and I've exposed that. We can talk about that another time. It's not related to this case. So real quick, also to keep in mind, so you're wondering, and Tracy, I'm going to come back and open a conversation again. I just want to set this stage so people understand how important this case is. So in October of 2018, Kate Starbird, who's out at Washington State, in the state of Washington University, I believe, essentially they had created, so the EIP, so Kate Starbird with EIP, they had this like advanced like AI, monitoring AI, where it would actually be able to graph out the entire networks of people who would spread some narrative that they would call misinformation, which we know to be true information, right? It was just malinformation, basically information that they knew was true but didn't want the public to hear, right? And this allowed the EIP to actually be able to check every single step of the way of what they deemed to be a false narrative to systematically censor the entire belief systems at scale. So this is Kate Starbird, in her own words, working with EIP. So this is her explaining exactly how they were able to plot out content and then know where to bottleneck it before it got out of control and they couldn't control it anymore.
At how
this claim went viral. These are plots that we were using almost for every incident that we picked up from this collaborative group. Our team, every time we picked up an incident, we would plot it in this way so we could see how it went viral. And what these do, this is a cumulative graph that shows the cumulative spread of a particular kind of claim. And what it has is on the y-axis is how many times it's been shared, and on the x-axis is time. And what we do is we plot each tweet on this as a shape, depending on what kind of, like what tweet type it is, if it's a retweet or a quote tweet or whatever. And we size each tweet by the size of the audience of that account. And what this allows us to do is not always, sometimes things take off with the random account somehow, but often you'll see these high follower accounts change the trajectory of a tweet, helping it go viral. So it allows us to see who is really influential in the spread of a claim. And so so his original post was repeatedly retweeted, remixed, and reframed as it spread through other influential social media accounts and right-wing media outlets. There we have like an account of Tim Cast, I think, really sort of changes the trajectory, and he's a American citizen journalist and a political commentator who actually gained influence through his coverage of Occupy Wall Street, but he's now aligned with right-wing populism in the United States. Another influential account in this incident belonged to the Gateway Pundit, a hyper-partisan media outlet that repeatedly spread false or misleading claims of voter fraud. In fact, I think they have something like 40 different incidents. Their domain is cited in our data of 40 different claims of voter fraud of different kinds. Eventually this false claim was amplified by the Twitter account of President Trump's son as well, which is a common kind of piece of the trajectory. Often it would eventually reach some of his closest allies and family members and be promoted from there. So online participants repeatedly activated to produce and spread information that sowed doubt in the election, highlighting irregularities and exaggerating the impact of small issues like stolen mail and spreading absolute falsehood.
So what she's actually got here on this graph was this was a specific content that she's talking about was ballots in a dumpster in Sonoma County. And originally some small account, like 2,000 or 3,000 followers, tweeted it out with some photos. Elijah Schaffer picked it up. Then it looks like Ian Miles Chong picked it up. Daily Mail picked it up. Tim Pool picked it up. Gateway Pundit. And then once it got past kind of like Daily Mail into Tim Pool territory and Gateway Pundit territory, it would just shoot up to the extent of reach and impressions. And so they try to bottleneck things, or they would try to bottleneck things around the smaller viewer accounts, or do it around Elisha Schaffer and Still Gray, which is Ian Miles Chong in there, before it got to Tim Pool, because they said that if Tim Pool got a hold of it, then the trajectory would completely change. And so this is what they were mapping out. This is how they were conversing with social media companies to get this content taken down before too many people saw it. Yes, Tracy, I saw you go on mic. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce Jill from Health Freedom Louisiana, one of the plaintiffs on the Missouri v. Biden lawsuit, as well as the other lawsuit I was talking about against EIP, etc.
Jill, welcome. I'd love to hear your thoughts and what you think so far.
Oh, hello, Tracy and Trash. Tell me, I'm afraid I don't know your name.
It's Aaron. You can call me Aaron, but Trash is fine. It's funny because it makes
Aaron.
everybody do that. I love that.
Okay. So nice to meet you. Tracy speaks highly of you. And thank you for your coverage of this case. Tracy's been phenomenal. It's so nice to see other people, doing excellent work in regarding, giving accurate information about it. But yeah, it's been a fascinating, surreal experience to be a part of this. We were invited by Solicitor General Liz Murrell to write a declaration in regards to the lawsuit that they filed last May, and it has just been an extremely surreal experience filing the separate plaintiff lawsuit with NCLA, Janine Eunice and John Vecchione, that fabulous organization, and then of course being approached to do the Hines v. Stamos lawsuit that you guys are speaking about in regards to Alex Stamos, Stanford Internet Observatory, all of these third-party actors involved in censorship. So I'm excited to see how this all plays out. Our attorneys did file a response to the government's motion to dismiss Hines v. Stamos. They just filed that last week, so you guys should be able to to find that as well. So yeah, we're fighting on it.
Those lawyers are badass and I love them so
Me
much.
too.
Just reading
Yeah.
that, oh my gosh, I was fist pumping throughout the entire thing. Just
Yeah,
saying.
me too. I'm included, in the email chain between all of them, and it is extremely exciting to see how they work and how their mind works. And of course, John Sauer, the incredible former Solicitor General for the state of Missouri, who is now contracted as the Special Assistant Attorney General with the state of Louisiana, is and just phenomenal. I mean, he is just a force of nature in and of himself. So to see his mind working and leading this team on this is just incredible. We're blessed to have him.
Yeah.
He's no joke either. I mean, you've heard
Yes.
him trash, right?
Oh, yeah. John Sauer. Oh, he's a beast. I wish they would have used him more when he was up on Capitol Hill, but such is
Yep.
life.
Me too. And he was amazing too. I had the honor and privilege of sitting in on the Fauci deposition last November. And I remember texting friends, watching him work and just telling him, pardon my language, that he was just bitch slapping the government's attorneys during that deposition. It was really fun to watch. And of course, I have to mention, our amazing governor-elect Jeff Landry was in that deposition with Fauci too. And I just love to let people know that he sat there across from Fauci with Robert F. Kennedy's book, The Real Anthony Fauci, all sticky noted in front of him on the table across from Anthony Fauci. So we're really blessed to have Jeff Landry on our side in the state of Louisiana as well.
Jeff Landry's amazing. I love that guy, and he's so unassuming, right? He's
Yes.
he's a good old boy, Cajun accent, just sitting there
Yeah,
talking. But then when you listen to him, you're like, my God, this man is sharp as a
he
tack.
is.
Like and he knows his business, right, Tracy? I mean, he knows his business.
He does. And if I can hijack this for a second, Jill, if you can you tell people what your group was doing and the harm that it caused you being censored like this and what you tried to accomplish?
Yeah.
And, you worked around it all and you've still done some absolutely amazing things, but speak to that for us.
Sure, absolutely. So we actually started Health Freedom Louisiana before COVID hit. We formed our business in the summer of 2019 because we heard a rumor that there was going to be legislation introduced to remove our exemption for vaccine requirements for school attendance here in the state of Louisiana. So we formed our organization then, and then of course COVID hit about 6 months later. And honestly, I don't think I've had a day off work since. But we really kind of geared towards opposing mandates, not just vaccine mandates, but mask mandates for school children. And then we kind of started another grassroots organization to help reopen our state in April of 2020 called Reopen Louisiana, where we tried to engage people who weren't already aware of the risks to vaccine exemptions. And that kind of morphed into, of course, the election conversation. So when they approached us about, writing a declaration for the lawsuit, we were touching on everything that this lawsuit speaks to, not just the vaccine mandates, but the mask mandates, government overreach. We talked about election integrity, the votes, the 2020 election. So we had so much to bring to the table as far as the harms that government censorship had caused to us. The very first hit on our Reopen Louisiana account that caused so much damage to not only our credibility but to our reach was an ask for the citizens of the state to contact the governor about the mask mandate, and we got hit and with a community standards violation, I believe. And it took our reach. We were kind of tracking our analytics because we were really agitating the governor. Like we had a great time just kind of countering the nonsense that was coming out of the governor's office and our Department of Health. So we were very antagonistic to him, and it really it garnered us a lot of support. So we were tracking our analytics on Facebook and saw that our reach within a month's time had been about 1.3 to 1.4 million people, which is basically a quarter of the population of the state of Louisiana. And after that first really significant community standard, to that one request for people to reach out and contact the governor and ask him to rescind the mask mandate for children, our reach was taken down to like nothing. It was like posting in a black hole. We couldn't contact people, and it was like months later when people were starting to engage with our account. One person asked us, they said, "Where did you guys go?" And we were like, we didn't go anywhere, but you just couldn't see us. It was so disheartening. It was demoralizing. And as we spoke about in our declaration, or one of our more recent declarations, is it really caused us to self-censor. And that in and of itself is a form of censorship. So not only was our speech imposed, but our ability to engage the public, to engage the government, which is another constitutionally protected First Amendment right. So that's how we got involved with it, and that's how it's impacted our business.
Unbelievable. It's just, you were the biggest thing to come out of the Fifth Circuit. One of the biggest things that people overlook, I think, is that
Mhm.
self-censorship statement. When you're self-censoring, it's also
It is.
censorship. If you're thinking three times about if you can post what you want to say and have to worry about being dinged for it or having your voice taken from
Right.
you, that also is included under the First Amendment. And that is so big and has ramifications far outside of just this case, Jill. So you guys are really making history.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough how surreal it is to be a part of this, and the magnitude of this case, and the significant harm that censorship has caused. I mean, granted, it's suppression of speech, but it really has caused an innumerable amount of deaths because people were denied life-saving information. And so it has so many ramifications, and I'm very hopeful of a positive outcome eventually.
Awesome. Awesome.
Well, and Jill, I think so. I'm glad that you explained exactly what happened to you, because that's not an uncommon thing. I mean, if you guys look at the list of plaintiffs, it'll go a mile long,
Mhm.
and I'm sure there's many people in this space that maybe ran communities or groups or had Instagram pages or Twitter accounts. I know I did. I've been taken down more times than anything. And I am
Mhm.
so receipt driven, non conjecture type person. I just am when it
Yeah.
comes to like presenting information. And so for me to be taken down constantly, that is that malinformation they're talking about. But what you explained is what happened in all different sectors, right? So it wasn't just the health ramifications. This was geopolitical ramifications. This was elections ramifications. This is representation of the public. This was the subversion of the Constitution and perversion of it. And this is going to have generational ramifications of the censorship that occurred, specifically within health, within information sphere, bad information getting astroturfed and lifted up, where truthful information was being suppressed and removed from the public discourse. We can't even begin to understand. This is why I say all the time, people are like, okay, aren't you being hyperbolic? When I say this is by far the most important civil liberties case that I will probably ever see in my generation. I hope to ever have to see. I'll put it that way. But at this point in my 42 years of life, this is by far the biggest civil liberties case that has ever come forward, and we're in this fight. So I really appreciate you coming in, Jill, and I'm glad you're here. And thanks for explaining that to us. But so looking forward, what else? What kind of other things are being talked about within the group of plaintiffs here? If you have kind of access with the team.
Sure. Well, I know there are requests to join Hines v. Stamos, which is really exciting because it gives it some more legitimacy, if you will. I think there was discussion of OAN, um, or AON, America's Online News, one of those news networks, was has requested to join. So I'm not sure if that's official yet or not, but yeah, I think it's going to get bigger. I'm not the only plaintiff anymore. I think it was myself and just Jim Hoft originally. So the list of plaintiffs is growing. And also, this is a class action. So it's not, again, just like Missouri v. Biden is not for my sole benefit or the plaintiff's sole benefit. This is for the benefit of individuals who have been harmed, by suppression of speech over the last 3+ years. So it should be interesting to see how this comes out. I know the goal is not to make money off of this. Our goal is to make these third party censors to feel the hurt, that we have experienced over the last several years, to make a financial statement in regards to their business policies.
And when you came up, I was just discussing Alex Stamos and the EIP and Kate Starbirds of the world. And originally, Terry Doty's decision on the Missouri v. Biden case came down. And when he came out, he was actually inhibiting part of these 10 different line items that he put out, was inhibiting these NGOs and these third-party university groups not only from continuing, but then not being able to change their name and creating another group. So it was actually prohibiting additional groups from being created, not just the ones that were mentioned, like Stanford Internet Observatory, EIP Virality Project, the Kate Starbirds of the world. A lot of these people, they were named in that Missouri v. Biden decision, but it also inhibited from creating future groups, which is what we're going to see moving forward and experiencing, because they're now pushing this into the universities. Unfortunately, was not mentioned was Harvard and the Belfer Center and many other. Censorship is a big business now. It is a big industry, and it's a big game, and there's a lot of money in it. And so they wanted to inhibit future growth opportunities for creating these divisions. So hopefully, correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy, maybe you can answer this. I think now that SCOTUS has the temporary injunction in front of them, that means that the original Terry Doty decision, not the Fifth Circuit's appeal, is what's going to be challenged at SCOTUS. Is that correct?
No, I think it's what the Fifth Circuit has ruled and decided.
Well, I
Yeah.
don't know of a legal mechanism where they can get these people included back in, but they were cut out. Now, CISA has been added, which is a win. But these NGOs, I believe, are cut out of it still then at this point.
Yes, which is why the lawsuit that Jill is talking about, the Hines v. Stamos one that I told you, we briefly discussed, that running in tandem is so important. Just so happens to be also in front of Judge Doty.
Yep, and that's why I was bringing that up. It was a kind of a lawyer thing where it's like I know the answer to the question. That's why I wanted to bring it up, Tracy, because it was like I was wanting to point out how this case is different and why it's just as important. So perfect. That's exactly right. I don't know, Tracy, if you had something you wanted to add on to that, or
No, I think we're at the juncture now where we're gonna, maybe Jill can answer this because it's something I don't know. Do we get a look at ongoing discovery, or is it only when there's a motion filed that we will get to see any of deposition transcripts and things like that?
I know I only get to see it when it's been filed. So I'm I'm afraid I'm the wrong person to ask that question.
You're lucky. If you're lucky is what you are. I would be popcorning it up every time we we got a filing. But like, I mentioned in the thread I did about SCOTUS, trash, and I'm never calling you by your first name ever. I'm just letting you know. Um, I mentioned in there a portion, like the government likes to lie and exaggerate about a lot of different things. And so when they were doing deposition of Anthony Fauci and all the plaintiffs they were granted deposition of, the Fifth Circuit was coming in because the government was going to the Fifth Circuit and saying, hey, we shouldn't have to answer to these questions. These people are too important and too busy. And the Fifth Circuit would say, oh, go one level below them. And if you can't get what you want, fine. And just as Judge Doughty wanted this stuff to be available to the public, the deposition transcripts and things like that. And the government was fighting against it, saying that, oh, they're all being threatened. The Surgeon General is being threatened. There's threats of violence against their lives. If you make this public, then they're gonna face a greater harm. And the judge basically wrote back and said, first of all, show me, which they couldn't produce anything, literally zero. Second of all, if you're not doing anything wrong, your deposition will be like watching paint dry on the wall. So, what harm could it potentially bring to you to have it be made public? If anything, it will help you to have these depositions be made public. And he released them all, save the people's home addresses, not like any redactions whatsoever. And the government really was pissed off about that. So if there's like, you can get sneaky. Like, I got the transcript of the hearing that I attended in Louisiana. And Jill, get ready because I'm going to be down there quite a bit once this case goes to court, like literally in trial. And I was able to get that because it was attached as an exhibit to a filing that they made in the case unrelated. So you can get things sometimes that they include as exhibits, even if the motion they're filing doesn't necessarily have anything to do with it. If they cite from it once, they have to include it when they file.
This is why I love following your work, Tracy. I learned so much about this case that I'm involved in from you.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
It's true.
Well, I mean, obviously, when you're running, you've got your community, you've got your group, and you guys have many other causes, and there's only so many time, so many hours in the day. Other people like Tracy and then myself would kind of get in there and get it in the weeds and say, okay, what can we get? What can we find? And then bring it forward. So it's me not having children and being able to dig as well. So, but I'm glad you joined us.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for allowing me to speak. If you have any other questions, I'm here.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead, Tracy.
Well, I mean, just basically, like, that's where we're at right now is that the case is being misreported on really almost everywhere. Of course, AG Bailey and AG Landry have to say it's a win, and it is in many ways a win. Like we normally say, this is more nuanced than just a yes or no. But at this point, just know the entire case is not in front of the Supreme Court. There is a stay on this injunction until they do hear the case when they bring up session again. And there's a lot more to it than just what's being reported out there. And that's what eats me alive is that I see people, and that's like kind of the purpose that serves trash is it gets people super excited about stuff only to then be disappointed later. And it kind of taints the well, so to speak. And so just, obviously I'm not saying I'm the only one doing any work on this. I'm not. But people need to really take the time like Trash has and Name and others to get to know what's really happening in this case before they start reporting on it. Otherwise, we're going to have an uninformed populace when it comes to what's going on.
Right. And then unreasonable expectations. Right, like once you can have the right expectations and you can kind of see how this is going to play out and navigate, I think that's where the real analysis begins. And then for a lot of people, this might be too in the weeds for some, but I would still encourage people who do have platforms that do want to cover this case, at least make sure that you're setting the right expectations. Like you said, like, yes, I think that Jeff Landry and Andrew Bailey should be going out on their social medias claiming that taking a victory lap. They're working their butts off, and any progress in this case, and then having every level of appeals court saying there's merit in this case. This case will move forward on merit. By saying that, that is a victory. It's just a matter of getting through motions. When Fifth Circuit cuts out CISA and many other groups and then brings them back in, it just needs to be able to tamper expectations and say, okay, this is actually what's happening with this case. It's very important. And if you don't know anything about it, let's go back and let's look at these individual groups' names. Start with the plaintiffs, start with the defendants, and then look at some of the stuff that was in early exhibits in the case and part of discovery. And that's Missouri v. Biden, of course. But this, I believe it's Hines v. Stamos. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that case is going to be huge because that's the NGOs, right? That's the Band-Aids. These are the ones that were doing extra constitutional work for the government that the government couldn't do themselves. This is very, very important because this is where a lot of money and the tools that were being developed to do this out of the private and public education sector are far more efficient than anything the U.S. government's going to create, right? And this is where the massive censorship was coming from. Now, there were requests. We saw this. I mean, we saw, like in the Missouri v. Biden case, Rob Flaherty, who was the White House director of electronic communications, being the absolute bully in Silicon Valley from the White House saying, you need to take this down. Why isn't this done? Why isn't enough done? I mean, he was all over the place. And then Andy Slavitt as well, who's also named in the case, was doing the same thing. A lot of these people like Jen Psaki, he was out there on the, in front of the American people saying, we are absolutely doing this with social media companies and we are going to get this stuff taken down. And then she's trying to fight to not have to be deposed. That's a whole other hilarious story. Go back to my previous spaces on that, because that's a great story. Matter of fact, Tracy, I think you covered that in Uncovered DC, yeah?
Yeah, I did. I actually took the time to read the transcript of the hearing in Virginia because it was so good. People don't understand. I read the entire thing out loud. It took me like an hour, but it was worth every minute of it.
So real quick, what she's talking about in Virginia. So Jen Psaki thought she was going to be slick. This Missouri v. Biden case is happening down in Louisiana in front of Terry Doty. They were wanting to depose her. And so she tried to fight it by appealing to a court in Virginia. And this judge was none too happy about Jen Psaki getting a court in Virginia involved. Could you kind of explain why that's funny? Because I think the judge was pretty funny in this. Sorry, Tracy, I think you're muted.
Oh yeah. It was hysterical because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, her attorney was Jeannie Rhee.
Yeah, that's correct.
So just to get yes, so this is the swamp of the swamp here, okay? The swamp of the swamp. Now, just to give some background on this because it is wildly entertaining. Jen Psaki left, and then the government was claiming that they didn't have any information at all about why Jen Psaki said what she said from the podium, which is a cornerstone of this lawsuit. And they wanted to depose her. She left. The press secretary that took over, they claimed ignorance. There's nothing returnable. We can't give you anything. So then they started petitioning to bring Jen Psaki in and interview her, because clearly, if nobody else knows anything, the only person that can answer to who told her to say those things from the podium is herself. There was a water cooler discussion or whatever. She's the only one who's going to know. So she, as a private citizen, was fighting that deposition request, saying she's a private citizen now. She shouldn't have to come in and testify to something that happened as when she was in her role as the press secretary. And because the plaintiff or the defendants are sued as an office, not in their individual capacity, what they try to do is they try to remove the people that were in those seats and put new heads in. I think almost every single person that was named in here has now resigned or left or has been transferred. So there was like 19 swaps of people within the White House Office of the Press, within the CDC, within the Surgeon General's office. So they'll like shuffle people or fire them so that they don't have to testify to what they know. So that's what Jen Psaki was basically doing in this instance. She goes into this Virginia court with her high-powered swamp attorneys, gets in front of this judge, asking this judge to step in and stop her from having to testify and be deposed. And the judge smacked them around to the point where Rhee was left a stuttering mess. I mean, it was you would never expect it from a Virginia judge ever. He basically said, "I don't understand. You're saying that it's going to take you too much time to prepare to be deposed, but you're also saying you have nothing to answer for. So what is the time that it's going to take you? What is the personal funds that you're going to have to use to prepare yourself for this if you're saying you have nothing to say?" And he just basically caught them with their pants down, and it was glorious.
It's one of my favorite stories. And that happened back in, I want to say, December, January of this year, because there was a deadline coming up in January for the Missouri v. Biden case where the government had to produce either, depositions of the key people or give a good reason why they would have somebody else be deposed in their place. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy comes to mind. He was one that was replaced by somebody else in the deposition. All right, U.S. Surgeon General. I don't agree that he should have been left out, but there's an argument I guess you could make, I suppose, but not really. But so that there was only a few key people that were replaced in this to be deposed. But they had a deadline in January, and the government had X amount of days to supply over 20,000 pieces of evidence and depositions on behalf of the plaintiffs. They had very short time to do this, and then the plaintiffs had a very short time to go through it. So to keep in mind, once again, let me just set the table what we're talking about here. We are not talking about the whole case. There's ongoing discovery, subpoenas, and requests right now by the legal teams. But what happened was they had to get this done quick so they could get a temporary injunction put in place, which would enjoin all of the defendants from communicating with social media companies to censor Americans' constitutionally protected illegal speech. The injunction then was supposed to be in place while the case played out. This case is going to take a year or two to play out. But the ongoing discovery during that time is going to be huge. And the committees that are up on Capitol Hill, once they pick a speaker again, that's another space from another time. I've been holding 8-hour spaces on that. I don't need to discuss it here. Once those committees fire back up, and keep going, because they are still working in the background. They're still sending subpoenas. They're still requesting appearances and depositions. But anyway, as they gain that stuff in the discovery in the case, more is going to come out about what was going on, what's happening, and there's going to be a lot to discover. But this injunction is very important because it stops them now, and it stops them while we have some serious problems going on in the world, and including an election coming up in 2024. So that is the gravity of this, but that's why they had to do an expedited injunction hearing to get all this discovery quickly so they could prove their case. And so far, the only thing that's included in the case that SCOTUS has seen, that the Fifth Circuit has seen, they're all saying what you have here now is enough to warrant merit on this case moving forward. We just need to make sure that we're enjoining the right parties from preventing them from suppressing America's constitutionally legal speech.
Yeah, the limited discovery part is something that really needs to be harped upon. And as a matter of fact, CISA was actually caught with their pants down withholding discovery, and they were able to figure that out based off of other documents that were provided in another way. And the judge himself actually stepped forward and said, "Hey guys, remember, this is limited discovery. There's going to be a lot more where this came from." Like, he even said it. He is a rock star, man. I swear. Like, I wish he could be SCOTUS nominated, but he's in his 60s, so they probably wouldn't go there, but he deserves it because he's amazing. I mean, a patriot through and through.
No, he really is, and I highly recommend going back. Like I said, go to Tracy's page. She's done mega threads on this. It includes the direct deposition, the emails, a lot of the exhibits that they had. It's all written in the transcripts of the case, in the filings. You can read it all there. It's all there. You can also, if you want to go back and listen to it, if you have a long drive or flight, I've had about 3 to 4 hour spaces on this covering exactly what the case is, what the updates are. You can find all that in my highlights tab. And of course, if you want to find her threads quicker by finding those recordings, I've obviously also included those in those recordings. And if you go down to the chat right now, matter of fact, and thank you guys for sharing the space, 68 reposts with 64 likes. Thank you guys very much. I actually included both her original update, and then 2 days ago, she threaded the SCOTUS as they grant cert. So you can go through and actually read the analysis, read part of the case, the opinions of the judges, the dissent of the other 3 judges, and kind of understand where we're at now and how this sits with SCOTUS. So then moving forward, when you see people reporting on this, or you see somebody tweeting about this, or someone's covering content on their YouTube channel, you'll be able to actually know what the facts are to make sure that they're held to account, that you understand, because you'll understand exactly what's happening versus what maybe sounds good on an audio recording. So, but
Yeah, yeah. You've done Yemen's work on this. I mean, it's been such a great thing. When you started doing this, I literally was jumping up and down. Thank God someone else is talking about this. I was screaming because I was censored off of Twitter when I was covering this. The only reason anybody knew about my work outside of that was Citizen Free Press, God bless him, was sharing my stuff and aggregating it out for me, which was a godsend when I was censored. So it's awesome. Do you take questions,
yeah, of
Trash, in your
course. Yeah,
spaces?
if there's any questions, sure.
Yeah, like if anyone has any question about any part of this at all, we can answer basically anything for you.
So James actually had a question down in the chat. I think we've addressed it, but James, you're actually up on stage. So if you want to ask your question or questions, please feel free.
Great. Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you guys so much for doing this. So I do have a question, which you can get ready for. Health Freedom Louisiana. So I've been doing content monitoring on one of the major social listening, social monitoring platforms that are out there. And so one of our bigger U.S. Senate launches, right, I got to see all of their reach and frequency for what they've been posting over the last 2 months. And I have to say, and I call this to this intention, and I'm talking to them, so I'm not talking out of school yet, but they had a tremendous amount of traffic coming from Twitter, and you could see the virality of their posts on Twitter and now X, right? But every single other platform, and particularly Facebook, where they have an audience that's comparable to the size of their audience on X, is is still absolutely being just shut down, right? I mean, it's almost like analog, where it's just like, they post something, they might get 20 or 30, likes to it and some engagement, and then that's it. It's like it's off. So I was wondering if Health Freedom Louisiana. Now you mentioned people saying like, "Hey, like where did you guys go?" um, how do you see the health of your online reach, right? Your digital voice right now, and do you think it's still being impacted by some of these, other organizations? So while the government is shut down, and thank God, the CISA, the digital hub part of it, is shut down, are the NGOs potentially still doing censorship? And and how do you see it impacting your virality, your online voice, like right now?
Oh, yes. Well, our main, prior to, all of the freedom that Twitter now offers, our main social media platform was Facebook. And we still don't have good engagement at all on Facebook. We had 2 closed groups that were taken completely offline. And we moved to a third closed group. But for probably the last 6 months to probably even a year, I could not be seen, like literally seen. None of my posts were seen in our groups, and for a short amount of time, I couldn't even do live video posts in our groups. I couldn't reply to comments. So yeah, nothing has changed really on Facebook. Twitter, I know Tracy kind of alludes to this too, but there's still some restrictions on Twitter. Um, I, we don't get engagements that other accounts do with, not that we have a significant following on Twitter, maybe less than 2,000 people, but still we don't get any kind of, it doesn't feel like an organic type of engagement on any social media, but definitely not on Facebook. We still feel some inhibition on Twitter that others, I think, have been freed from. So there's something still in their system that recognizes what we do and what we talk about. Our reposts, especially on vaccine topics, on harms and associated risk and stuff like that, are still, there's not a lot of engagement on that. But yeah, and even on Instagram seems to be one of our fastest growing reaches, but still we're very hesitant to post from particular people, and on particular topics. Like there's, some reels that we won't reshare that have direct, um, um, any kind of direct, uh, directly associates harms with vaccines. We just know it's very, very risky. So I tend to repost and reshare a lot more on Twitter, just knowing that I won't necessarily get like a community standard, but I know I won't have the engagement that I do on other platforms like Instagram, for example. And we've actually moved from a website because we know we're suppressed on Google as well. So we've moved to writing our blogs and newsletters on Substack, where we know we have a little bit more freedom of speech. But again, that website in and of itself is censored on, say, Twitter and Facebook. So right now it's a no-win situation for us. We've never really been and never really intentionally monetized our business. We only try to make back the expenses that we incur. Myself and my 3 other business owners are volunteers. We do this voluntarily. But we do have costs that we incur, like our gas money and whatnot, to the capital. But we've never really been able to monetize that. We had an affiliation with the Tuttle Twins. Nobody ever saw those posts. It's just been really ridiculously difficult engaging with the public, talking about what we talk about.
I think that's a great question, and then kind of expand on that a bit. So I've experienced this as well. It seems there are keywords that are still within the algorithm There are ghost bans that are going on, and I don't know who's doing it, whether that's the NGOs, whether it's Twitter themselves. Maybe they had a moderating team at that time, because shortly after I received a ghost ban, and I'll explain what that was. What happened was, if you guys know me, I put together a lot of threads. I do a ton of threading. I don't do a whole lot of singular posts unless it's just something simple or a retweet. But like when I put out content, it's typically in thread format. And what the ghost ban did was it didn't prevent people from seeing the original starter of the thread, but what it did was any subsequent reply would say post not available. If I replied to anybody, it would immediately say post not available. So I couldn't reply to anybody. I could only tweet, and all of the threads, all the work that I had done was completely gutted out. And then shortly after that, Elon went in and fired the moderating team. If you guys remember this was a couple months ago. And so I don't know if it's the algorithmic code, the ghost code that Elon talks about is still in there. If there were bad actors, if NGOs still have access, I'm sure there are people who do have access in other places. Sorry, our UPS truck was really loud. There are people in other places that probably still have access, it seems like, but there is a lot of old code. And if you guys remember, back when Dave Rubin actually went to San Francisco Twitter headquarters and he did an interview with Elon, one of the things that he said post that interview was that Elon has tried to figure out whether or not he's going to burn down the entire code and rebuild it. You can't really do that, but that's what they need to do because there's so much stuff in it. But I think what they're doing is actually building a subsequent platform and probably will merge it over eventually because the code is just there's so much stuff in there that people are still getting banned. So keywords, there's still throttling that happens if you have X amount of users or followers. I've noticed when stuff like got picked up by people with millions of followers and they're retweeting it, it would just go absolutely nuclear and then it would just stop. It would completely stop. And they always stopped around 1,500, 1,700 likes, and then the impressions would just die off. You could see it in the analytics. Even something that I had that broke through that got 1.3 million impressions, it was 5 times the engagement of anything that I've seen that has quadruple the impressions. So something is still within the code that I'm even being throttled even when something takes off. So just to explain that a little bit more, that's what I see that's happening on Twitter right now. So again, I think a lot of this is going to come out, and I'm hoping Elon will play ball, but it's always a wait and see, not a trust. But I hope that explains a little bit more too, James. It's definitely happening 100%. Jen, your co-host, go ahead, and then Robert joined her.
That's fascinating. No, I just want to say thank you so much, and thank you to the plaintiff. Amazing work. God bless.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys are not following Health Freedom Louisiana, please consider a follow. Let's try to get their content out there, get their reach further on X. This is the least censored platform, but it is still not perfect. But Instagram and Facebook, I don't even go there anymore. There's no point. I'll get banned just for posting a meme, so it's really no point. But follow everybody here on the panel. Jen, your co-host, go ahead. I'm glad to see Mr. Bose joined us as well. Good to see you, Robert. But go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Health Freedom and Tracy for all, you guys are doing with this case. I just want to echo something you guys were saying about, the reach and the censorship. Like back in 2020, when we were doing all the election stuff, like we literally watched how your reach, like when we were sending out emails or we were, trying to get Twitter posts out at the time, like you would see how you would go from getting all these likes, all these retweets to all of a sudden you said one thing and it dropped, right? And what they would do is they wouldn't even warn you, right? You wouldn't even know that you weren't reaching anybody and you were completely siloed. And the effect that had on the election was unbelievable, right? The effect that had on COVID was unbelievable because if people would have actually known the facts of what was actually happening, they've taken polls after of like, oh, if you would have known what Biden was doing or if the Hunter Biden laptop was real, would that have changed your vote? And overwhelmingly, people say, yeah, that would have changed my vote. The fact if I would have known, Hunter was out there doing what he was doing, right? But they changed the story and said it was completely false. And then every time you tried to post something, it was completely gone. And then when Mickey Willis was launching his video Plandemic, we were helping with, trying to get the video out there. And we watched how we were sending it in our DMs to people being like, oh, get this video out there, like share this video, we need to get it out there. And it was disappearing out of the DMs, right? So it wasn't that it was just the tweets that were being censored, it was your DMs that were being censored, and stuff was being completely taken out. And people weren't realizing it. So the lengths to which they did, and then like Trash pointed out, that they had to outsource this taking away of our constitutional rights to these NGOs and companies that didn't give a shit if they were going against the Constitution, right? The government couldn't be seen as doing it, but yeah, let's hire these guys. It's great. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out. Thanks, Trash. And Robert, good to see you.
Hey, folks. Tracy, great work. Jay Trash, Jennifer, Name. I got a question about the evidence in the case and what happens to it now that it's being considered at Supreme Court. It seems like what I heard, there was many volumes of terabytes of data that were produced in the case in Missouri v. Biden, like emails between government agents and the tech platforms and the social media platforms. That's really tangible evidence of collusion and control, effectively. Like Judge Doty said, the social media companies were, in fact, the government, right? So, but the email evidence, is that going to be open source, or other people can look at it so that you can find out specific communications between them? I mean, the algorithms are kind of separate. It's the algorithms where lots of censorship happens, but it might not be as tangible to a judge to say, oh my gosh, this is a specific instance of an email sent to suppress some particular, election information or whatever. What's going to happen with the evidence?
Yeah, the evidence is all available. The emails, the documentation, everything has been put into the record and is referenceable and available, which is one of the reasons why Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas said they haven't even read the record in this case because it's voluminous and it is very extensive and it is clear cut. So if you wanted to see some of that, I can actually, if you go to my pinned tweet and scroll down, it's all available. Everything's there, as well as a link to the docket, Robert. So you can actually go in and look at around July, I don't know, mid June, early July for some of the stuff that you want to see. But it's all included, yes.
Excellent, will do. So the links would have all the materials that were disclosed in discovery.
Yes, and as well as all of the depositions that were taken from, I believe it was 6 or 7 deposed in this. They deposed Elvis Chan of the FBI, Anthony Fauci, Waldo, who was Vivek Murthy's underling. I forget who it was from CISA that they questioned, but all of those are available as well. And there's also the live depositions are viewable on YouTube. I've linked to those in the thread as well. You can actually watch them. They released the video of them.
That's great. So the next quick question for folks to consider on their own personal, everybody probably has their own unique experiences about being banned, suppressed, throttled, whatever, canceled. Do you think that there'll be, if there was a favorable ruling at the SCOTUS about Missouri v. Biden, that individuals will have causes of action against the social media platforms?
Well, that's interesting because they went to move this to a class back in July or in May when the hearing happened. They tried to move this as a class that was denied, but it doesn't really matter in this case, only because the result and the ramification will be wide sweeping. And the reason why this case has been so wildly successful and others have failed is because in this case, the government is being accused of the censorship mechanism, not the private social media company. In every other instance, other than Alex Berenson's case, which he settled, we have only seen judges and judges grant motions to dismiss based upon the fact that these are private companies that can do what they want, basically. Because this is a government action that's being taken, that's why this has been so wildly successful. And just to make sure that I hammer this point home, at SCOTUS right now is the temporary injunction that has been granted and upheld at the Fifth Circuit against the plaintiff, the defendants in this case, them being the government agencies, not the actual case body itself. That hasn't even gotten to trial yet. It's in early discovery right now, and they're gathering discovery. So just to make sure that everyone knows
Well,
that.
so if individuals had causes of action against the social media platforms, what are they going to argue? That the government made us do this and it wasn't us? Or are they going to actually disclose that they received lots of money or lots of favorable deals because of Patriot Act 2.0 to do this stuff?
And this is why you're spot on here with that, because that's why I've been saying what I've been saying about the social media companies being in a position where they really are going to want to comply with the narrative we're seeing right now as truth, which is the government coerced them to do the censoring. If they can fall back on that, they're going to, they're going to be able to emerge victorious, so to speak, in many of these other causes of action that you're talking about being brought. As a matter of fact, just today, DC Drano filed he filed on that Supreme Court docket. His name is Rogan O'Hanley, and he sued Twitter for the reasons that you're talking about right now. And he filed to be heard in conjunction because his suit was dismissed. And so the very thing that you're talking about right now actually just came up today in a concurrent filing on this docket at the SCOTUS.
Dude, Robert, sign me up, okay? Because we had America First projects, which was huge, huge on Facebook. And it went from reaching millions of people a day to reaching like 0 people overnight. And then it was gone. Like Facebook just took the entire thing.
Well, I mean, the same thing happened to me, Jen, when I was basically doing the same analysis on all of the legal surrounding the 2020 election. Stanford Internet Observatory actually tried to dissect my argument on the Pennsylvania cases that I was making and say it was misinformation. So it absolutely affected things. It will continue to affect things, which is why the stay on this injunction is asinine. And those 3 judges rightfully called it out, because every single day that the public square is siphoned off, people are harmed, either their ability to listen, their self-censorship tactics, or their ability to speak. So it's an ongoing harm every single day. And the Fifth Circuit affirmed that it's an ongoing harm. So SCOTUS is out of bounds here.
Do you think because of
Well,
that,
and
that the SCOTUS is going to expedite the calendar?
Well, someone was posting underneath actually and said Andrew Bailey on with Benny today said he thinks that this case will be heard by the end of the year. That would be glorious if they expedited and came back in to hear it. I would be very, very happy.
Well, and real quick, Tracy, there was another question. This is a perfect time to introduce this question. So the question was, for those of us that are not up to date, could you give us kind of like a 30,000 foot view or like a cliff notes on what the 3 that dissented, what they said? Like if you can kind of, I don't know, sum that up so they understand.
Yeah, I could do it in a few sentences. They basically said their fellow justices didn't read this case. Otherwise, they never would have done this with this indefinite stay. They said that the government's examples are hypotheticals, meaning like they're saying we won't be able to use our bully pulpit to talk to the people in the country about what we think is the best course of action on any given topic. And SCOTUS in the dissension said that's a hypothetical that doesn't even tread into what this injunction covers at all. It's nonsense. And then scolded the government and said, "What do you want to censor between now and the spring when this comes up to us? Is that what this is about? That you actually want to be able to censor? Because what you're saying is just not true." They also said that they don't have standing for the stay at all because the likelihood of the merits has been shown and there's been irreparable harm. And then they said that they're worried that this decision that was made to stay this indefinitely will be taken as a kind of hat tip to the government censorship operation, letting them censor the places that most Americans are going now to get their news and information. And if you want, Trash, can you pull up the last little sentence of the dissent and just read it, because that says it all.
Well, and Tracy, something you said right there about, them getting their news alternatively. Take yourself back to 2020, right? With COVID and everything. If people weren't able to see people online on Twitter, on Facebook, putting out other information that was counter to the narrative that was being pushed on every single mainstream media outlet, there was no other information. And now, come to find out, the information that the mainstream media was pushing was completely false.
And the final
Yeah.
sentence that you're talking about, Tracy, let me make sure I've got this correct. We're talking about the hypothetical.
It should say something like I fear that by making this decision.
Yep,
The very last
I
sentence
got it.
of the yeah.
So at this time in history of our country, what the court has done, I fear, will be seen by some as giving the government a green light to use heavy-handed tactics to skew the presentation of views on the medium that increasingly dominates the dissemination of news. That is most unfortunate. Golly. That's quite something. Real quick, just a note, YouTube just came out with a policy recently that is going to affect. I mean, they've already been doing this, but this is basically a direct attack on independent journalists and media people who have large YouTube followings, YouTube channels like Tim Pool's of the world and many others. Their new policy now is they're basically setting forth saying there are authoritative sources on information, i.e. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, so on and so forth. Basically what YouTube is doubling down on here is they're saying, because all these legacy media outlets basically spend a ton of money on ad spend on YouTube, these are going to be the authoritative sources. I can pull that up. It was a change in policy just recently that is going to absolutely crater most independent news sources on YouTube. So they're going to have to move to Rumble.
And that's why you see them. Yes. And just so you know, I just came across this the other day, and I don't know if you've seen it, but FIRE, it's an acronym. It's an organization, a free speech organization in New York, sued New York, a la Missouri v. Biden, but at the state level, because Letitia James was trying to do to the social media companies in New York what the government is doing writ large all over, and the judge barred them from continuing with that action as the case moves forward. And they just recently, given the Hamas Israel catastrophe that's ongoing, they recently just tried to get social media platform Rumble to give them all of their content moderation strategies surrounding it and everything else against that injunction. And Fire, who was representing Rumble, had to come in and send a cease and desist letter or say that they were going to issue a contempt request on the case because New York Governor or New York AG Letitia James was trying to get involved. Same thing is happening on a statewide level in California. Elon Musk is suing California right now as X for the same reason. A demands from the Attorney General in California to provide all kinds of information and policy on what they'll be doing to ban people and censor people on social media from California. So I'm following all of this stuff now, and it's really heating up.
Yeah, it really is, and because that's how important that I would say Hines v. Stamos and Missouri v. Biden are, and that's why you're seeing these localized actions and the private companies. I mean, like let's be honest, like YouTube, Google, like they're they're a lost cause. Meta, I don't know how smart they're going to be moving forward through all this. We see what Elon's trying to fight. We see what's going on there, and again, I am not going to attribute any kind of hero or tear down Elon. Everything is wait to be seen, but this is the freer spot here. And Rumble and what Chris Pavlovski is doing as well is really good. So doing the best we can, I think, to fight through this. And Tracy, thank you for your tenacious reporting on this. If you guys want to read the dissent, it is down in the chat. The first one is just a quick tweet. The second one that I attached in that thread to Tracy's original is her entire analysis and breakdown. Now, there was one more question that I saw. I think we answered it as far as like summarizing the dissent, but there was another question I saw. I'm not quite sure which the case itself actually answers. I was just going to try to point that out. But if you take a look, it's all.
Trish,
yeah.
To Robert's question, I just wanted to ask if anyone knew the status of Eric Schmidt's legislation in the U.S. Senate that enabled individuals to sue federal employees for violating their rights. I know that there's statute in some of the states where you can sue state employees for violating your individual rights, but I know Schmidt was trying to work on that in the Senate, and I don't know if anybody knows an update on that.
I got nothing.
I've got nothing as well. I was going to leave some space for folks. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, so there may be existing code that addresses suppression of civil rights like free speech, It's an old Civil Rights Act of 1871. The senators could say, "Oh, you already got the right now. You don't need it." But what Senator Schmidt now is doing was to make it really specific. And I definitely support that legislation. Hope McConnell and swamp people will let that go through. Not optimistic about that, but people could say you got rights from an individual standpoint. You can do civil actions against government officials suppressing your rights, like free speech.
I do know that there is a Supreme Court case called Bivens or Blivens that gives citizens the right to sue the U.S. government for civil rights violations. There's also 1983 claims.
Yeah, that's the one I was
And
talking about. So Bivens is it could be
yeah,
certain parameters, but yes, those are both good. They might not. I'm not a lawyer, so they might not apply directly to what social media, but we'll see.
Hey guys,
can I
So,
have just a few minutes to make a comment? It'll be
Do
fast.
you have a question regarding the case, or are we going to take? I want to kind of stay on topic.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Hello. I think we
hey
lost.
is
guys.
that Jim?
Yeah, this Jim. I've actually been sued.
Hi, Jim.
Hi guys.
How are you?
I'm great. Yes, the answer is yes. There is a way that you can sue a state or federal or local authority for violating your civil rights. It's Title 42, Section 1983. Ask me how I know. And the person that does this, that violates your civil rights, you do get discovery and going both ways. And further, it's not just civilly, it's also criminally. That's why these cases that are going against Mr. Trump right now, this is not just it's any of your rights that are enumerated in the Bill of Rights. You can be sued for violating any of them. That's why the cases like what's going on in Atlanta is so damnable, because they're arguing that you have no rights to do what you did. And in where she issues the gag order, Letitia James Judge Chutkan has violated Donald Trump's civil rights, but she is not an employee or a vassal that is under color of law. That's the kicker. Any of them can be sued, but it has to be under color of law. So you're going to see people like governors or someone that's in an administrative trying to enforce a regulation or a rule. Then they're functioning under color of law because you have the threat of either a fine or imprisonment. If that's the case, then you can prosecute. But if there's no, Go ahead.
But Jim, what if they have immunity, right? And I don't know if this is like the same thing, or maybe I'm just confused. But like when Eric Swalwell and Jamie Raskin changed my tweet on the floor of Congress, and I tried to sue them, right? When they added the blue check mark, changed the complete meaning of my tweet, changed my photo. Like I tried to sue them independently, and I got told that they have parliamentary immunity on the floor of Congress.
They do, but there's also something called qualified immunity, where if the person did what they did and they violated your civil rights, but it was what they were supposed to be doing as told by their department or agency or whomever, then that individual person is going to get a pass, but the department does not. The department does not get a pass for that. And then you end up, you don't just sue the department, the person, you sue the department at the same time. And qualified immunity does mean something here. So you're probably not going to get the individual if someone higher up has told them to do this, but you might be able to get through vicarious liability the person that's above them, and you might be able to get the agency, department, city, county, whatever it was that did that in the first place. That's why I think all of the mask mandates that happened and denying people the right to assemble, to go to church, to all of that, I think all of that is subject to litigation under this, because the penalty were fines and imprisonment. I think every bit of that is subject to 42-1983.
And that highlights again the the reason that these two cases that we're referencing here, the Hines v. Stamos, Missouri v. Biden, is so important moving forward, because individuals will be able to take, some of this discovery and this material, hopefully, and be able to then be able to create their own lawsuits for their own losses as well, instead of joining as a plaintiff. The plaintiffs are a mile long in these cases as of right now, but it's very important to note that all of this is, the ramifications of this is not just ending with this case and discovery. This is going to open it up for many other people. So I think those are the right questions to ask. Tracy, I know you're busy. I don't know how much time you have left. If you want to let me know, maybe we can carry this on for another few questions, and then maybe we can close it down.
Yeah, I'm fine. I actually have time today to stay on with you until the questions are exhausted. So
No kidding. What a gift today. Thank you, Tracy. So if you guys want to have any questions, comments, put them down in the chat here. I'm looking for them right now, seeing if there's any other questions that would be suitable to ask on this panel. But meanwhile, so again, I can't remind you guys enough. Follow everyone up on stage. Everyone here is trying to do the best work they can to try to help this country. And also, Tracy's reporting on this is down in the chat. Let me see what this says. Talk to the various plaintiffs' law firms about getting copies of depositions. Okay, so James Charlton here says, talk to the various plaintiffs' law firms about getting copies of depositions and discovery, which is not yet filed as part of motion. He says, be nice and offer to pay for copies, email, staff time, etc. The official court reporter will give, for a fee, daily transcripts to anyone requesting them in most jurisdictions. So if that answers your questions, guys, about obtaining some of this for different lawsuits for different purposes, you can do that if you play nice. And okay, so we've answered the question, what's the gist of the 3 dissenting SCOTUS opinions? Let's see. How does this equate to our freedom of speech on a sidewalk or a public venue? Well, it doesn't. But this is more, these cases specifically are taking on digital communications and platform, the digital town hall, which would be social media. That's what these cases are defining against. That's a whole other conversation to be had. Now, real quick.
Trash, I got a question real quick.
Great.
Yeah, so effectively right now, the censorship industrial complex, or how that's, I guess, what we're calling it, is that effectively defunded at the moment? Because, and then we saw CISA added a couple of weeks ago. And if it is defunded, Tracy, do you see a push to get that refunded, or do you foresee it being refunded, even if the case is still ongoing, since it was so effective in the last election?
no, it's not. It's actually, that's what we're basically lamenting today, is that the Supreme Court put a stay on the injunction that stopped them from taking this action, and so they can still take it as of today because of that. So everything is basically status quo from before this happened.
And the funding I think you're referring to, Jen, is when the DoD funding out of for Pentagon and DoD, so that funding was actually pulled. So what that means is a lot of the other CIA carve-outs and these other NGOs that are not like Stanford Internet Observatory that were connected with like DoD or the Pentagon, all of those have been defunded, yes. But that is the importance of paying attention to NDAAs that are coming through, because this is where they try to refund and create new offices, i.e., name is here, go look at the Foreign Malign Influence Center. The Foreign Malign Influence Center was basically replacing what the Disinformation Governance Board was supposed to be doing. Once that got taken down in 20 days, the Foreign Malign Influence Center has kind of ramped up its operations, and that came in under the NDAA. There are several NDAAs kicking around both in the Senate and the House. They believe in the House, at least the America Freedom Caucus believes that the one in the House is the most viable moving forward and removes a lot of these censorship apparatuses. I'm not convinced, but I haven't seen it. So it's going to be important to pay attention to the NDAAs moving forward, and them creating these new offices of censorship underneath these various different agencies within our government.
What stuns me about the NDAA, sorry, Jen, I misinterpreted your question because I don't think it's directly tied to the case, but that was my fault, not yours. What stuns me about this is the NDAA is still actually something that our senators and congressmen talk about, and they'll use the guise of national security to do it. But we clearly see they're not concerned about national security at all, because we have a wide open southern border. So it's really just as it was filed the first day that it was passed. a mechanism to control you, and that's what the NDAA is. And I haven't, even Devin Nunes would advocate for the NDAA, and it's just a nightmarish piece of legislation. They tried to sneak some other things in, if I recall correctly, in a separate bill. Remember, Lindsey Graham didn't know what the bill was or what it said. What was that? He was asked about it. It was something else that came about. Trash, do you remember what I'm talking about?
It was additional funding for wars, and it was a censorship type of apparatus. And they said, "Well, why are you including this in here?" And he said, "Well, to be honest with you, I hadn't read it." So it was kind of what we're
Wasn't it something like the Safe
Restrict Act.
Internet Act or something like
Restrict.
about it was
It was the
Restrict
Restrict
Act.
Act.
yes, 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 yes.
That was
so.
wasn't that a Blumenthal thing? Or no, not Blumenthal. Who's the other guy, Trash? Who
Oh,
tried to sneak that in?
I'm trying to remember who it was because he's a
He's on
Republican.
the Senate Intel Committee.
Yes.
It was the guy from North Dakota,
No,
wasn't it?
hang on.
Or South Dakota?
Gordon. I'm trying to remember who that was because he then went out and put a thread out once we started attacking the Restrict Act, like constantly on Spaces everywhere. Jennifer and Dustin, you guys were doing it. Elon's
Yep.
retweeting it and responding to it. We were at that time.
Mark Warner.
Warner. That's it.
And
Yeah,
by the way,
Yep.
I don't like being the guy who goes, there's something I know that I'm not going to say, but this guy is up to no good because there's another thing. And Tracy and Trash, I've told you, I don't know if you remember, but it's something that is, I literally can't tweet about it. I sent it to the Missouri v. Biden people because you don't want to put everything in public because it could jeopardize things and they can go start deleting and changing shit. But that guy, Warner, dangerous guy. Same guy who tried to
And
restrict
John
Act.
Thune
Yeah.
name.
Anyway.
Well, Warner was behind. Warner was the one who was talking to Assange and Christopher Steele, and he was big in Spygate. So yeah, he's a bad news.
No, he's He's incredible bad news. So yeah, this is the fight, guys. This is what you got to be paying attention to. And real quick, Jill, I believe this question is probably going to be directed at you. There was somebody here. She was also removed from social media as well. And her question was, this is Silent Survivor. She said, "Can I still have a lawyer file an amicus brief on my behalf, or is it too late?"
For Missouri v. Biden, I don't think it's too. That's a legal question above my pay grade, but I don't think it's too late. As far as Hines v. Stamos, it's a class action, so she can, be a part of it when we are successful. I'm guessing at the end, but I'm not really sure about an.
She can on SCOTUS. Yes,
Okay,
100% yes.
see, Tracy knows it all. Ask Tracy.
I wouldn't go that far.
So yeah, no, and I would assume that she could probably move forward. I would talk to an attorney about that. You can present all the analysis of the case itself, and I'm sure they can look into it for sure. I would like you to be able to join on if you can. So I'm still looking for more questions, guys. If not, we can probably wrap this up. I just wanted to update since we've been doing these spaces, Tracy, you and I, and Jennifer, for a while on this Missouri v. Biden, and now Hines v. Stamos, which I now will be getting my hands all over as well. So Hines v. Stamos and Missouri v. Biden, both, I am now going to jump all over as well. With you, Tracy, I'll help with the looking through the 800 pages. But I'm not seeing too many other questions. I don't know if anybody else has any final words or statements or questions or anything else. Please let me know, and we'll go from there. If not, you can always access these recordings of all these spaces and all these threads that have been done in the past. If you go to my profile, it's the highlights tab, which is the third one from the left. You click that, and all the recordings of the spaces are in there. All the threads are in there. And obviously, if you want to access a lot of this content, specifically the analysis that Tracy's put forward, just go to her profile. The mega threads are all there. All the content's there, guys. Yeah, Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, Tracy, going forward, if you have any calls to action for people to write letters or phone calls to the court or anything like that, let us know and we can rally people to start doing that.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, and just tell your primary people space. I'm gonna have to hop in a non-Missouri Biden space of yours one day. Tell your primary people, start working now and get their army all ready to go because they're up against it and they're going to need all the support they can get.
Heck yeah, that's what we've been doing. We've been Jim down here. Jim, he's actually running against Turd Ferguson. That's his new name. That's what we're calling him. But yeah, he's doing really good, and he's been an amazing add to these spaces that we've had over the past couple of days, and really getting to like him. He's great.
Thank you, Jim.
We should have a vetting space where we have a
That's what
list of
we've been doing. Tracy, you got to join us. So we've had like a whole range of candidates that are running in primaries all over the country come up in the spaces, tell us about their races, what, obstacles they're facing, if the Clinton machine is coming after them, or the Obama machine, or the establishment. Like, up until this point, these smaller races and these people, these candidates who are brave enough to run, they haven't had a place where they could go and get their story out and tell other people of the obstacles and the fights they're in order to get elected as good America First candidates. So spaces have become a really great place to platform these races and to get these primary opponents to these people to get their stories out.
That's fantastic. I want to hit them with I used to do before we end, Trish, when back in the day, the Ron Paul days, there was an organization called Liberty Candidates, and we had a like 20 question vetting form. And we used to send them out to all, like, candidates would come to us and say, we'd like to be endorsed by Liberty Candidates. And we'd send them back the vetting questionnaire. And we had like a panel of like 20 or 30 hardcore liberty minded constitutionalists. I was on the panel vetting these candidates based on their answers. And I found the questionnaire like a week or two ago. And you guys would lose it if you saw what we were talking about in like 2009. It would be perfect for today. I should pass it along so you can use it.
Yeah, please do. We would love that.
Awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
I would take.
Go ahead, Jim.
I would answer that questionnaire. No problem.
It's good stuff. It really you have to know your shit, no pun intended, to answer it. So I'll send it over, Jim.
Yeah,
Your challenge is
Tracy,
accepted.
Send it
please
to
send
me.
it over.
I'd love
That's
to.
what
Put me on a
that's what
clock too. There's got to be a time limit so that you're not Googling this stuff.
That's what we're doing at America Mission. We're going to start helping these candidates because the ones in the primary, like you said, like the GOP is not supposed to be interfering in all these races, and they're doing it all across the country, right? So by the time they get through the primary, they're so beat up by the time they get to the general election that they have to fight all these battles and still get through the primary where the GOP is not supposed to be. And they get them on media buys, they get them on send different vendors for the campaigns. So at America Mission, Dustin and I've been doing this for over a decade, so we've gathered all of our resources and we're going to start helping these people like Jim and all these races across the country take some of those outrageous prices and bring them down so they have more money to be in the fight and not have to expend their money in all these other places.
That's fantastic. And never discount the power of a door knock, especially for these local races. It's huge.
No, 100%.
Or interrupting a pharmacy place like Mike Pence did. That's Mike Pence, not the other.
There was like 4 people in there. Like, why is this guy with white hair yelling at us right now? This is so weird.
Oh, he totally paid them. Come on. Right?
That was a pharmacy? Did he serious?
It was like a pharmacy or Hallmark card place where he sat all these people and like no one was smiling. So it's like obviously they got paid money to sit there. It's pretty funny.
I just want to say that Tom Emmer is the wish.com version of Mike Pence. Just putting it out there now, people. Starting the game. Let's go.
So we'll just close it out, Trish, quickly by just saying that the Missouri v. Biden decision is on the temporary injunction. As per Andrew Bailey on Benny's show earlier, they're trying, I guess, to get this heard before session starts again in the spring. So there's a stay on this with no end, a never-ending stay on the temporary injunction until the SCOTUS hears the merits of it. From what the justices who dissented said, the other justices didn't even read the record to know what the case was really about before they made the decision, which highly troubled them. It's a rather unprecedented thing to have a 5-page dissent alongside a decision for cert like this, and it happened. So there are positives and negatives, but we just have to make sure that we're paying attention. Hopefully, AG Bailey is correct and they pick this up earlier in some sort of emergency session or something, and we get to the end result, which I am nearly certain will be an upholding of that injunction. But until then, the government is free to work with social media companies to coerce them to censor your speech on social media without fear of any ramifications.
Yeah. So house cleaning note. Trash, I DM'd you, told you why I couldn't make it on earlier. I assume you saw that. But Tracy's the one who has covered this from a journalist perspective or point of view from the beginning in detail, meaning reading all the court, the filings. Trash and I keep up with them. We read them too, and then we have spaces. So, but especially Tracy is the one sort of journalist who runs a company who is covering this like in detail. It's really getting on my nerves that, that's fine if other outlets or journalists want to cover this situation, but this is the second situation where I've seen people, and I'm not going to say the person's name, but put out a headline or thing called saying victory. Like, I don't know what's going on, but there are journalists with large platforms, or at least they call themselves journalists, that literally will put out some catchy like headline of this, and it's very obvious they haven't even read the damn filing or the order or whatever. It's really annoying. So if you want to get, Tracy's going to cover, same with Trash, me, whoever. We're going to just put out the truth on this case. We're going to read the filings and put out what it is. We're not putting things out for impressions or Twitter ad revenue or whatever it is. So, I just wish these other people that are sort of covering this just stop, just take a seat and just sit this one out and go towards their other things, because it's really getting on my nerves when I see a article by someone. Thankfully, it's behind a paywall, so you have to like pay to read the garbage that says victory, because there's really certainly nothing in the Supreme Court thing that's a victory other than that they're going to hear it. But again, it's only on the injunction. It's like not even on the case, which I think this person is getting wrong too. But in their decision to hear it, there's certainly no victory. I mean, like, come on, it's getting absurd. But anyway, just a vent. Sorry.
Thank you, Name, for that kind hat tip.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. It is frustrating. We talked about it earlier, like in the beginning. It is frustrating, but I think people are getting to the point where they're reading for themselves, which is awesome. Don't kill me, Trash. I got a voicemail. I got to return it like literally 2 seconds ago. But I love you guys. Thanks for doing this. You guys rock. And hopefully we'll have some more news before the end of the year.
Yep, 100%. I'm hoping we will too. And Tracy,
So.
thank you so much. Name, everybody, Jim, Jill, everyone follow Health Freedom Louisiana. She's up on stage. We need to get her platform built out on X here. Is a plaintiff in the Hines v. Stamos case moving forward. So really excited. Jill, if you have any final words before I close this out, go ahead, and then I'm going to close it down.
No, just thank you again for allowing me to share our experience, and for the follows. Greatly appreciated. We appreciate the work that you guys are doing on this too, to keep everybody informed. Very good job. Excellent work.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the kind words. So, guys, you know me. Just keep following me. We're all over this. Anytime there's anything breaking, anything new, Tracy will find it first, no doubt, and then she'll DM me and Name, and then we start looking at it, and then we have our own back conversations about what it all means, what it seems like, and then the process goes that Tracy will then thread whatever it is, and then we open up a space the following Monday and go over the information, and we break it all down in bite-sized pieces. So thanks you all for being here again. Jim, good to see you again. Everybody, Name, and look for part 8. I'm hoping it's coming before the end of the year. Talk to you guys soon.
Dude, I hope so.
Me too, bro.
I hope so.
Me too.
Thanks, Crash.
Listen, I give you credit because frustrating. It's if any corporation anywhere in the world ran like this effing government, they would be out of business in less than a month. Forget about years.
Yeah, like everybody would have been fired within 30 days. Just to be clear.
Literally everybody. Hemorrhaging money, not able to make decisions, bickering amongst one another. Imagine trying to run a board meeting and all you need to do is elect the chair to chair the meeting, and you can't do that because you're too busy fighting with each other over who which I mean, come on. Like it's you know what it is? It reminds me of local politics when a new guard comes in with a new vision and direction and the old guard does not want to let go of the microphone. It's exactly what it is because I experienced it myself, so I know. And it's terrible.
Like imagine, right? Imagine for a moment you're an employer and all of your employees are taking money from adversarial companies